Hello and welcome back to another episode of Coming Distractions. I'm your host, Jay, and I'm here with my co-host this week, Demetrius.
Hey.
All right, guys, we're back to discuss Marvel's latest TV project that premiered in IMAX, Inhumans.
We are Inhumans. Our people need a leader. The days of Black Bolt are coming to an end.
Maximus is trying to take over Attilan.
Honor me as your new king.
Never.
You must escape now.
We have to get to Earth.
What the?
We will not let anyone stop us. Nothing can keep us from being free.
Things are changing, and they're not going back.
Okay, so Demetrius, you and I got up, saw a 10:45 showing of this in theaters. What did you think of Inhumans?
I didn't hate it. You know, there was a lot of
I feel like that's going to be the theme of this review.
Right. Didn't hate it, but didn't love it, but see potential.
Okay, that's fair.
With as much knowledge as we all have and the accessibility to the other reviewers or whatnot, we went in tepid, expecting something really, really terrible. But it was something that could be something really good. It's just right now we're kind of disappointed because Scott Buck is heading this up, and we all know that he's famous for the last couple seasons of Dexter and Iron Fist. And I don't know who liked Iron Fist.
Very well. Apparently, more people than I thought, but
they're dumb. They like garbage.
I mean, I wouldn't disagree with you.
But yeah, I mean, I went in thinking more of like a 1 star. Came out with a solid 2.5. We'll talk about it, but the difference between television productions and IMAX production, the disparity is there, but you just kind of have to not think about it,
Okay, I think that's fair. So you're saying 2.5?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
So right off the top, I would probably give it a 2. And I agree with you on the potential part of it, right? Like the series has laid some ground in the first 2 episodes where you go, okay, this is not great, but considering where you saw Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. start and where Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is now, you can say, okay,
they've learned.
They've learned. And look, I would argue that it has the same rough start as Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but not as rough of a start. No, because the beginning of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was like, cool, that beginning part was cool, and then it just went straight downhill for arguably almost 2 seasons before it kind of picked itself back up. Where this one, I think, will probably end the first season moderate to strong, and then maybe the second season, once they hopefully decide to move to someone besides Scott Buck, they can actually get it together. So I'm going to go with a 2. You're saying a 2.5. So let's lay out the plot, at least for this first 2 episodes that we saw in the theaters. That I guess sets the groundwork for the season, right? So basically, you have the Inhumans royal family, led by Black Bolt and Medusa, who are the king and queen, and then you have Karnak and Gorgon, who are his cousins, but like his trusted inner circle, and then Crystal, who is the sister of Medusa,
right? And then Maximus, who is Black Bolt's brother,
right? Who is basically, it's played by Ewan Rion, who played Ramsay Bolton from Game of Thrones, who, by the way, is the strongest actor on the show by
Indeed.
far. But he's basically kind of playing the same character,
yeah,
but like less evil, just slightly less evil, just because Game of Thrones allows him to be a horrible human being.
Correct.
So he's basically trying to do a coup and take over the Inhumans, their world, on their country or world or what have you, on the moon, right? So at the same time, Triton, who is one of the sort of inner circle Inhumans, is on Earth trying to rescue other Inhumans, right? And he's there because they basically got the signal that there's all these Inhumans that are popping up. basically from the storyline from Agents of
S.H.I.E.L.D.,
S.H.I.E.L.D., right? So that was kind of cool to tie it in and not try to keep it isolated in that world, which I thought would have been silly.
Right,
Because
of course.
they had...
Something DC would have done.
Right, and there was, well, yeah, and like, but there was talk that they were going to keep it as a separate thing, and I was like, that doesn't make any sense at all, right? So that's the general plot, and then basically the Inhumans that you know, the royal family, through circumstances because of this coup, end up going to Earth, right? Which is what they did not want to do, but they end up on Earth. I won't get into that, and we'll stay away from spoilers. That's all I'll tell you, right? Because the show comes out September 29th, I believe. So everyone will have a chance to see it.
On Fridays, mind you,
that's a big point, actually.
Which is, I don't know if they're putting it behind the 8-ball, but they are, because who's home on Fridays to watch this? But then once again, who watches anything live anymore?
Right.
So hopefully on-demand situations will propel it forward.
Yeah, to throw a show like this on Fridays seems odd. To say the least, but yeah, I agree with you. It could be that they're not worried about that. They're just worried about the streaming or on demand numbers or what have you, which are now actually being taken legitimate. So who knows? So with that plot being laid out, the show takes place mostly in Hawaii, which I thought was kind of an interesting place for them to shoot. It actually feels a lot like Lost in a way to me, because I was also shot there. Just the locale does. The guy who plays Black Bolt, the actor is Anson Mount. He's fine. Like, he's got a commanding presence, even though he doesn't speak, which I dug. I thought
and he emotes well for someone who can't speak,
right?
And like what's going on with them. It's kind of like anybody who has to act through latex masks or something or other.
Right, exactly.
Their eyes mean so much. His eyes mean a lot,
Yeah.
Anytime that he might move his mouth open, that's when Black Bolt speaks, or at least like a cough or something, and that doesn't fare too well to whomever's on the other end of it.
Right, which there was a funny scene with that. But again, we won't get into it. And it was just like, oh, okay, well, there's his powers.
It's legit.
Yeah, they work. So I dug him. I thought he was good. He had a pretty good scene, because they're aliens. They have this, like, them in like normal situations on Earth kind of moments, and he has one where he kind of, again, to stay away from spoilers, but he goes into like a clothing store, which I thought was a funny scene. Like, it was actually legit good. And again, he does a good job of emoting and like portraying this character who can't speak, and actually does really well in that scene. That requires actually a decent amount timing from him. The woman who plays Medusa, Serinda Swan, who other people might know, she's on Ballers as well. She was fine, not terrible. She was fine. You and I talked offline. The hair looked terrible in the trailers, but it actually didn't look horrible.
No, the hair, it moved as naturally as you could possibly make prehensile hair, move. It almost looked like it was as defensive as she was. Like, it reflected her emotions at the time. Whenever she was ready to get into a fight, it was ready. And I was thinking that's something that you would remember from the Fantastic Four TV show that came back out in 1994, along with the Iron Man Power Hour. So
right.
They were a part of that too, and it moved just the way it should have.
Yeah, like, I mean, again, this idea that it's because it's in IMAX. Like, the thought process of like it should have movie level special effects. Well, it didn't. It had TV level.
It had ABC TV levels. Yeah.
Right. And again, it wasn't amazing, but it wasn't bad. I was surprised because in the trailer I was like, "Yo, this looks horrible." Mm-hmm. But they don't use it. The thing is, they don't use it a lot, and they use it sparingly. But if anything, the hair is just kind of like a secondary part of her that's always just kind of like flowing a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was a better effect than it just being boring and straight, and then all of a sudden, and it's like, wow, this looks really bad.
To speak to the character design, they went full Kirby on this. There was no, like, when you think about Scott Buck, you think about what he did with Iron Fist, that, they shied away from what made Iron Fist as far as the comic book, right. depiction of him. And then you think about any other, I guess DC properties, whatever, where they shy away from what makes a character special. They actually had the alien designs on like Triton, or they put the hooves on
Gorgon.
On Gorgon, you know, he didn't have, which would have been kind of offensive because the Gorgon is like a big bull, you know, with like a nose ring type deal. So if they had the one black guy look like an animal, then we would have.
Yeah,
but then he couldn't swim.
Yeah,
there was a couple things that was happening where
that shit was funny.
If you were woke, you'd be like, motherfucker. Like,
that shit was kind of funny. We were watching it, and he was like, he couldn't swim. We're like, really? The black dude can't swim? All right, man. Like, all right, fine, it's fine. Yeah. So, yeah, I thought her design was okay. It wasn't bad. Again, you know, you also have to, you know, measure your expectations here, right? Like, this is also TV. There were a couple times where I couldn't help myself. I just looked this up. I couldn't help myself because all I could think of when she was walking sometimes, I was like, yo, she looks like, was it Sindel from fucking Mortal Kombat? Like, yeah. Like her hair, the way it was just kind of funny to me. But all in all, I thought she was good. She does have like some pretty decent like action sequences that were not bad. They were not bad.
I was surprised that they actually gave her something to do other than, oh, Black Bolt's going to say this, or this is what Black Bolt thinks. Or because she was basically his interpreter. Oh yeah, and translator interpreter because he couldn't speak and no one else was reading the sign language that he was giving. You know, she had to be the voice of the king. Yeah. That's what she was supposed to be like, I guess, relegated to, but she showed us halfway through the movie that she could do a little bit more than that. So.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of cool. Ken Lung or Luang, I'm sorry if I mispronounced it. He plays Karnak. Okay, I like the Karnak character in the comics, but my whole thing with him was like, this guy should be doing more. Like, he should be doing way more. One, he's one of the stronger actors on the show. He's been around for a long time, by the way. He's a pretty successful character actor. But I felt like he should have done more. Like, he seems to get relegated to not being able to do a lot. I have a feeling that that's going to change over time, and he's going to be sort of a more like active fighter in the show. He had a couple scenes that were kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. He's probably the one with the most
useful power.
Yeah, well, useful power, but like just visually interesting power.
Yeah,
right? Like because he has like this way of like knowing where like directions are and stuff, and that kind of pops out, which I thought was kind of cool.
If you remember Action Man, which was the cartoon that was CGI based, like it was sort of like Reboot or something like that came on at like 7:30 on during the weekdays or whatever, where he can visualize what he was going to do before he did it and had the different possibilities eliminated that was not going to lead to success. That's what we essentially saw. You know,
that's exactly what it is.
And it was really cool to see that. Like, we're like, oh, damn, he fucked up. Oh, no, he didn't. Okay. Yeah. He knew better.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of cool. Like, I definitely dug that. The only problem with Karnak, and it's the weird generic TV guy view thing is, hey, we'll just give him tattoos on his face. And like, we're not going to make him particularly look different, which I thought was, look, I get it. Television has a certain budget, but you know, like prosthetics, you know, as far as like, look, Klingons have been around on TV for a long time. Mm-hmm. Like you can do some level of prosthetics there that would make him look a little bit more unique. And that was one of the things actually I had a problem with the series is like when they were on Attilan, most people just look like regular human beings. Like they didn't have a lot of, like I felt like it should just be an array of fucking weirdos.
I mean, true, but I did see like some.
Yeah, there were some.
There were some. Like the way that their caste system works, if your power or if whenever you would go through Terrigenesis did not amount to something that could be used as like either a flyer or something like energy projection or something of a grand scale that would put you on like say the Avengers, then you were relegated to the mines. To mine what? We don't know.
Yeah.
There is this one guy who was the father of a child who went through the Terrigenesis process. If you looked at his hands, which they did not showcase at all, his hands were basically
like claws.
Yeah, giant claws that could dig deeper. He was like a mole or a gopher type deal, and that's where he was working in the mines.
Right.
And then you had the other people who went through Terrigenesis and nothing happened, so therefore they're just considered humans, and they're considered less than those who had powers that did not work on a level of grand scale. You know, so it was interesting. I want to see more of how they interact with one another, but it doesn't seem like they want to go into something that is that deep, you know?
Right. Okay. So, and I think that's a good point. And, I want to dig into that. So let's quickly just get through the rest of these, like, sort of main characters, which is, so, Isabel Cornish plays Crystal, and Emmy Ikwalker plays Gorgon. I thought Gorgon was fine.
He didn't have too much to do.
He didn't have a lot to do, at least in these 2 episodes, right? Like, so in fairness to him. So we don't know. And then Crystal sucked. She was awful. Awful. The worst part of this 2-part series. Her acting was terrible. Her lines were written so, like, they were bad, okay? There's just nothing interesting about them.
The only sense of agency that she had was that she was Lockjaw's, like, handler. And Lockjaw is the teleporting bulldog that's massive or whatever. Whenever she told him to do something, he would do it by her command because basically he was her dog.
That was it.
Other than that,
Lockjaw is a more interesting character than Crystal.
Yeah. Like, they showcase her power like once, and we're like, oh, well, that's all you're going to do with it?
Like, okay.
Whatever, put it away.
Yeah. Call that giant cute dog again, because no one else cares.
Put it away.
So let's quickly jump back to your previous point, because I think it's a good one, which is this idea of the show takes place on Earth, right? Like, that's where the show is clearly going.
Right.
I was really hoping they wouldn't do that. I was hoping that they would, like, maybe they come to Earth a little bit and then they go back, because I wanted it to be what it should be is Game of Thrones in fucking space. Is what it should be, right? It should be this idea of this royal family that's there and they're dealing with their shit, and, like, there's coups and there's backstabbing and all this other stuff, and they use their powers in that regard. Mm-hmm. But that's not what it is. It's all Earthbound.
Yeah. I want to blame Scott Buck on that, because that's the one thing, like, if you expect to see the X-Men meet, the Starjammers or, Lilandra out in space, that's not happening, because they're all coming to Earth to do what? Have conversations and be boring. That's essentially what's going to be happening with with the
yeah, my dog is farting.
Yeah, so professional. Anyways, yeah, everyone's coming to Earth, and it's not fun. Like, it's what's fun about seeing a city that is in an invisible bubble on the moon or whatnot is, are we going to find them? Are we going to discover them and see what we're going to do? Like, I think that's more interesting than them coming to us.
Because, fish out of water story.
Right. I mean, that's been done as far as us having an expedition out there to see, because they actually addressed this within the first, like, 20 minutes. Like, what are we going to do if they find us? Right. I want to know what we're going to do if we find them. I mean, do we have a sword application up there now, or
right? And like,
let's expand this shit.
Yeah, and that was that to me. And look, again, we're completely in the dark here because we're just speculating, right? But it is clear from like the thing they played at the end of, like, on this season of Inhumans, like, it's all on Earth, right? It all takes place on Earth.
With the season finale looking like it's going to go back to Attilan.
Like maybe at the very end or something.
Which doesn't mean anything to me, because that means all the actions on Earth, and I don't want to see that.
Right. And so, that whole idea of, like, digging into, like, the caste system that they have there and stuff like that would be interesting, and it would be different. And to me, this is just my opinion. What I would have done is, okay, here are the Inhumans. They're on they're in space and all this other shit. They got their own thing, and all this culmination of, like, the coup and everything else is happening. Then you have the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. are in space. Figure out a way to bring them together.
To need them.
Ooh. And that would have made sense. But instead, they're going to do the fish out of water thing, which I think it's kind of lame.
It just hit me that, we've already had the introduction of the Kree. If they come back because their failed experiments happen to be the Inhumans are thriving, and they find out about it, and Coulson wants to help save them because guess what? Daisy is one of them. Right. You know what I mean?
Like, there's a lot more. Yeah.
Damn.
And look, maybe that is the plan at some point. Maybe at the end of season 1 of the show, they figure out how to connect it. I don't know. But it seems to me that you've got a show that is going to have a rough start. It is. Like, I can tell you that right now. We've seen it. It's going to be a rough start. I think some people are going to be like, yeah, I'm down for this. And some people are going to be like, this looks like garbage. I think both of them, somewhere in the middle, is probably correct. But why not figure out a way to get your show that now is really successful to help pull it up? Right. Instead of having them ride on these two parallel lines, never to meet. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Especially for the MCU or the ABC universe, because it's all connected was a hashtag for a reason.
Yeah.
You know? So use that and make sense of it all, and make sure that you make fans out of those who weren't really feeling Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because they weren't really going into like superpowers and all that, whatever. But now we're full on, like say Jack Kirby, and just say, hey, special effects out the ass. Like everyone's got something that's special about it. I mean, we saw butterfly wings in this thing.
Right.
Come on.
Like, yeah, I think there might be a missed opportunity, and I can't say 100% because obviously I haven't seen the whole season, but I do feel like the idea of locking them to Earth is it's cheap. Like, it's a cheap way to do it. And look, if you want to make this shit work, throw a little bit of time into it and throw a little bit of money into it and make it work. But again, you've got the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. that are already in space. Utilize them. Yeah. Like, I hope that they do. Maybe they will. We just don't know about it. We don't know. But use them. At least on some level, use them.
You see, the one point I want to make is that it seems like we're too far into these cycles to think that they are so worried about what people might think is normal or what people might think is too extraordinary or too far-fetched.
Why?
Because exactly when it comes to, we're finally getting a Thor movie that makes sense for Thor as opposed to what one was and what the Dark World was. You know, we're finally getting to the point where, you know, it just makes sense to have more alien-based storylines, because these worlds are fantastic. These universes are extraordinary, and relegating them to Earth doesn't make any sense for how long you've been doing this, Marvel. I mean, we're talking about 2008 to 2018, where we have Avengers, you know, Infinity War. It's 10 years of work. You know, whenever Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. came out, that's 4 or 5 years of work that you've done to put them in space and for it to make sense.
Why take them out?
Why take it back?
Out? Well, and not only why take it back, why take characters who are in space and take them out of it?
Right.
It makes no sense.
They're trying to make the MCU great again.
Let's not do that. Let's
bring it back. Topical.
Yeah. Like, let's not make them wear cheap red hats. But I do want to see the show do well. I will watch it when it comes on. Obviously, I'm not going to rewatch these first 2 episodes because why? For what?
IMAX, bitch.
But I don't know. I think a 2.5. I think it's probably right where it is. And honestly, it is not as bad as I thought it was going to be. It is not as good as it should have been. You know, some people are like, this is Marvel's first fail. No, it's not.
Iron Fist was.
Iron Fist is. Iron Fist is far worse. Look, at no point was I just bored out of my mind watching this. I wasn't. I was just like, okay, this is some like regular ass TV shit.
And that's all I've got. You have those moments where you're like, that's a dumb decision, or that doesn't make sense because that person shouldn't have that because it was taken from them before.
Right.
What?
Right.
You know,
and there's there's definitely a couple moments like that. I was like,
no. Editing continuity. We're paying attention.
Right. And that was 5 minutes ago. How did you shoot this episode? You know, it was like out of order or something. But that I think is about as much as I'd like to say about it and let people watch it for themselves. But Inhumans, it's okay.
Watch it on a Saturday morning.
Yeah. You know? Yeah. Like literally, like, don't rush out. I don't think people need to rush out and see it in IMAX. It's okay. Like, it's just okay. Wait till September, the end of September, to catch it on ABC.
Yep.
All right, guys. That is it for another episode of Coming Distractions. If you are watching this on YouTube, make sure you go and subscribe to the podcast. which is just called Coming Distractions. You can go to comingdistractionspod.com to also subscribe as well. If you are listening to this only, make sure you go to our YouTube page, youtube.com/the Nerdpocalypse, and then you can find all the video versions of these reviews. All right, guys, we'll see you next time.
Have a good one. Bye.